Hello and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and these are my weekly wonderings and wonderings. Today is Valentine's Day and my son is at a mock trial tournament. So we're getting our week started by heading over there and hoping to catch his team in action for the first round. And then my husband and I, are going to go on our Valentine's Day / anniversary date. This year, as I have mentioned before, is our 20th anniversary in February, in a week and a half or so. But we're going to take a trip in the summer because the timing works better for us. So we're going to take an anniversary trip in the summer. So today we're just going to have a combined sort of date day. And so that's going to be a lot of fun and a great way to start our week. On Monday, I'm off, but I do have plans to help my sister move, and my boys are going to be helping her lift some heavy stuff. So I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done this week, but I'm hoping to have a lot of fun with Regency and Once Upon a February reading. Just a quick update on what I'm currently in the middle of and what I hope to start this week. So I am reading The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, about a quarter to a third of the way through that, really enjoying it, enjoying my time reading that book, enjoying not only his cultural explanations, descriptions of his travels, his travelogue aspect of it, but also enjoying the humor that he brings to it and his insights into humanity. So that is a lot of fun. I dropped Charlotte by Julia Barrett, DNF'd that last week, so no longer reading that. Just picked up Austen at Sea by Natalie Jenner, I believe, and am enjoying that so far. I have some minor reservations, but all in all, I'm enjoying it. Some things that would be priority for me coming up over the next 2 weeks as we wrap up February would be 6 Weeks by the Sea by Paula Byrne, which is another Jane Austen book. Reading more in Georgette Heye's Regency world on my Kindle. Reading The Rumpled Gentleman on my Kindle because I downloaded it a couple weeks ago and haven't gotten any further into it, but that's just a fun read. The Heart of Bennett Hollow by Joanne Bischoff, also on my Kindle. And then any other February Regency reading that I feel like getting into. I have quite a bit that are available for me that I'll just mood read my way through. So, but the priority is to finish The Innocents Abroad, and well, I don't know that I'll finish that this week, but I do hope to finish Austen at Sea this week and get in some other fun mood reading just because. So those are my plans this week. We'll see what I'm able to get to and what I actually do. President's Day, and I am home for the moment. In a minute here, I'm going to be heading out hither and yon all over God's green creation, or at least over all of Northern Virginia, running errands, etc. But right now I am home and I will give you an update on my reading. I finished 2 books over the weekend. The first one was The Rumpled Gentleman by Sally Britton, which was actually a novella. Apparently, it had originally been included in an anthology of several novellas, and I guess they were all fantasy or fairy tale retelling stories. I'm not 100% sure. That novella collection is no longer in print, and this book is available as a standalone. And it is not in Sally Britton's usual style. Typically, she writes Regency romance novels. This one is in the Victorian era, and I'm pretty sure, I want to say it's Victorian, and it has a bit of a magical fantasy element in addition to being a fairy tale retelling. And it is the fairy tale retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. So I read that for Once Upon a February, and it was fun. I got it on like a Kindle, Stuff Your Kindle Day or something like that, not knowing anything about it except that I did like Sally Britton's books, generally speaking. And so it's very good. Very unlike her other books, but still enjoyable. A quick read. Not something that is super memorable or even ranks as a top fairy tale retelling, I don't think, but it was good. I like how where she was going with the plot and how she told it. It's just that being a novella, and she admitted herself, it is missing a lot of things. It's missing the depth that a true novel would have, and that she is perfectly capable of bringing to a story. So the format, has its limitations. So for what it was, though, it was good. And then it was, very clean and everything, all that stuff. So I also just this morning finished Austen at Sea by Natalie Jenner. And overall, I have to say, I was very sad to be disappointed by this book in 2 ways. First of all, I did read all the way through. I ended up skimming some things because that's my first objection. It was honestly a little bit boring and slow moving. I think because we get so many different perspectives and angles and we move so slowly through the story that it's hard to keep your interest in it. And I don't mind a large cast of characters in a book, but some of them didn't really seem to be necessary. And also, I don't think we needed all of their perspectives that we got. And also, I don't think that enough time was spent on our main characters, which is these 2 main sisters here and their story. We get their stories, and they're definitely the focal point of the story, but it's just, we don't sit with them long enough to really get to know them and be interested in them and care about what happens to them. At least that was me. That's how I felt. And so I just started skimming because I wanted to find out, what happened in the story and where things went and how different things were resolved. But the getting there was, it took a while. I did like some things about it, about how she formatted the story. I mean, first of all, I love these end papers. They're really beautiful. Every time I saw them, I was like, oh, it's such a beautiful book. And adding to the beauty of the book, I like how the chapter titles were done and the information at the beginning of each chapter. The book is divided into books or parts, and each one breaks down what all is in the part. And a lot of these phrases here are referencing other works of literature or literary ideas, or sometimes just things that are happening in the story. The titles are interesting, and you get to see them all laid out, and you kind of see what's going to happen in this portion of the book. So that was really interesting. Also, it was very a creative approach to the storytelling, connecting all the characters in the way that she did. I mean, she's got a lot going on in here, and I feel like that maybe is part of the problem. It's too convoluted and not focused enough, and so that leads to a kind of disorganized, chaotic storyline that doesn't really pull you in. But she does have Jane Austen's brother, Sir Francis Austen, as a character here, as well as various other people associated with the Austen family. And then she has Louisa May Alcott as a character in the story, which was fun. Her contribution to the story was, it honestly provided a little bit, maybe not comic relief necessarily for the story, because it wasn't that heavy of a story, but a more lighthearted element, I guess, and kind of a foil to other things that were happening in the story. And that our main characters were all fictional characters, a set of sisters in Boston, and their father, who was a justice on the Massachusetts Supreme Court, I think. One of his fellow justices was also a character in this story, but they're fictional. And then there was some brothers who lived in Philadelphia who are publishers, are also main characters in the story, sort of main characters. And then there's some other, there's the other characters thrown in. There are some other real life characters thrown into the story as well. A lot of other people happening. But it's interesting how she has all of these characters and how she does tie their stories together. It just ended up being a very convoluted way of telling the story. And it took a long time to weave those threads together. And then when she was done weaving them all together, I was dissatisfied with multiple of the story threads and the way that they played out. And on one hand, I'm sitting there thinking, like, does she even know where she's going with this plot? And why did that particular story end up that way? That was just nonsensical. On the other hand, I think all of it was weaving together to prove her primary point, which was about property rights of women in the 19th century, in the Victorian era, in England and America, and the fight for women's rights. And if I had realized that that was like the main point of the story, I would not have been as interested in reading it, mostly because I'm tired of reading about that in all books set in the 19th century. Like, weren't there any other things happening at that time that we could read about? Any other issues? Or do we even have to read about issues of the day when we're writing a historical fiction? Like, can it just be a story exploring deeper themes of humanity than just historical current events? I get tired of it. I get tired of like diatribes in books focused solely on issues, issue-driven storylines. It just, whether I agree with the issue at hand or not, which isn't really the point here. I'm tired of reading about it. Like, I want a good story that explores themes of humanity and character and virtue and vice without getting caught up in the nitty-gritty of current contemporary events or trying to analyze them through modern cultural eyes, and look at history through a modern lens. Like, there's a place for that, but I'm personally just tired of it. Like, I just want to read a good story. And in the end, this wasn't that. I mean, it was fine. There were things that I did enjoy about it. I didn't hate it. I'm gonna end up giving it like 3 stars, but it's not one that really gripped me. It's not one that I loved. It's not one that I found particularly interesting and absorbing. And I was a little bit, in the end, disappointed by that. So there's that one, which is so sad because Taylor gave me this book. It had been on my Amazon wish list, and she gave me this book for Christmas, and I was really looking forward to reading it. And it does seem like sometimes some of the books that I'm the most excited about reading end up being the most disappointing because I had expected more from them than they delivered, or expected maybe not more from them, but something different from them than what they delivered. So that was the case with this book. It delivered something other than what I was expecting and looking for, and so that disappointed me personally. However, I know that many people actually really appreciated the main thrust of this story and the issue that was raised and the way even that it was handled in the story. So just because it disappointed me, it wasn't what I was looking for, it might be something that exactly fits the bill for you personally. So you may enjoy this book much more than I did. Also, it's pretty clean. Like, I would have a differing view of morality from the author. So in that sense, it's not clean, but there aren't scenes, if you know what I'm saying. And there's not language or anything like that. But definitely not written from a Christian worldview, but it's a secular book, so that's to be expected. So just keep that in mind if you want to read it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that book. And I am still reading The Innocents Abroad and Georgia Hare's Regency World. So I have a lot of other Feb Regency and February books to think about to possibly choose to read. The next one I pick up, and I hope I'm not disappointed by this one, is 6 Weeks by the Sea by Paula Byrne that I have been wanting to read as well. There's several titles by Paula Byrne that interest me about Jane Austen, so I am hoping to get to them all eventually, but I have this one, so I'm going to start with this one, 6 Weeks by the Sea, and see if I like it any better than the other one. I did want to mention, actually, one thing of interest that that I wanted to mention about Austen at Sea is that in this book, they are on a ship going across the ocean, as you can see, to England, and the characters in the book, they put on a play, and as the story goes, Louisa May Alcott writes a script for Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, which I just finished reading last week, and I had been reading for several months. And so it was fresh in my mind, and it was a very familiar story. That story is spoiled in this book, just FYI, if you haven't read it yet. But it was really, that part of the story was so fun, especially since I had just read the book, and there was that direct connection between the two. So there's been a lot of intersecting between my different books going on. It's just fun to find those little Easter eggs, so to speak, not intentionally left there by the authors, but just because I'm having to read them in sequence, I'm noticing those things. So that was fun. But also this book, another connection between that one and this one is part of this storyline goes into Jane Austen's story of what happened in her 6 Weeks by the Sea, which this book explores in a fictional way, and this one also did to a lesser extent, but it was definitely a part of the plot. So there is that interesting little thread connecting a bridge from one book to another book. So I probably will pick this up next for my Feb Regency reading, and it also would fit for the historic romance for Alma's reading challenge for the year. So, got all those things in progress, and I will keep reading and let you know how it goes. Hello, Wednesday afternoon. I like these, oh look, they said have a great day at Starbucks. Also, I like these cups. Looks like collegiate lettering. Kind of vintage looking. So fun. Decaf. Sad news. I picked up and I put right back down again. Well, not quite, but sort of. Oh, look at all of those geese. Oh. Sorry, I'm very distracted apparently. I picked up and then put back down again, not too far into it, 6 Weeks by the Sea. 6 Weeks by the Sea is divided into 6 chapters of sorts. Each chapter is kind of lengthy, and it's literally one of the weeks. So there are 6 weeks. Each week is like a long chapter with multiple little subdivisions within it. I read, I think, 2 of those chapters, and I was into the 3rd, and I was just like, okay, why am I forcing myself to read this? Because I'm not enjoying it. And so I did a little bit of research of reviews of the book to see if there would be any improvement on the things that I was struggling with. And I saw that there would not. And so I was like, there's no point in me struggling to finish this book just to finish it for no reason. So I DNF'd it. Primarily, the writing was like disjointed. The author was obviously trying to mimic Jane Austen's style or a Regency era style of writing with her syntax and her vocabulary and the way she was weaving the narration. But it was just too disjointed. And the narrative was going from like one scene and then like kind of like flitting to another unrelated scene. And we weren't sitting long enough in anything to really grasp fully what was going on and to have a strong sense or to provide a strong sense of flow to the story overall. So I was struggling to really get into it because of that. Very similar problems to the other book that I ended up DNFing, although that one did spend plenty of time in a scene, almost too much time, but it just never went anywhere. This one was like going places, but it was hard to follow because it was so disjointed, and it was not a pleasant reading experience because of that. And then on top of that, the author was really just trying to do too much, too many characters, and not enough time spent with any of them. Like I said, we were just flitting from one thing to the next and not focusing on anything. Structurally, there were problems, in my opinion. And when I was looking up the reviews, I saw that that was a comment many people had. Disjointed was a word that was used several times in the reviews to describe the narration style and the trouble that a lot of people had with it. Some people loved it. A lot of people loved it. It hasn't been terribly received, but I was not enjoying it. Furthermore, I felt like the author was trying to add every possible 21st century topic of interest into the story to make it more, I don't know, relatable to modern readers, I guess. And so it was like, check, we got this issue, check, we got this issue, check, we got this issue. And it was too much. It was like, the focus was not there. It was like scattered, and she was building something up between two of the characters. And I was like, what are we doing here with these? Like, why? It's a complete side story that has nothing to do with, okay, I guess tangentially it was sort of related to the primary plot line, but it didn't need to be there. On top of all of that, as I was reading the reviews, I saw where people were saying, so the story is supposed to be 6 weeks by the sea, a time period in Jane Austen's life where we know she was at Sidmouth, and she, according to her family later on, she met someone there. They made plans to meet again like a year later or whatever. He never showed up. Come to find out years later, he died or whatever. So, and some people say that was Jane Austen's one true love. That's a little bit conjecture, but it's fun to think about. So this was supposed to be imagining that incident in Jane Austen's life. Well, in one of the reviews I read, the person said, and I didn't realize this, the person that was supposed to be Jane Austen's love interest, according to Paula Byrne, the author, was a real person, and he was heavily involved in the abolitionist movement in England. The problem is that the timeline would not have worked for him to have met Jane Austen and to be in this story. Also, he wasn't even a possibility. The author, Paula Byrne, apparently just picked this real person for whatever reason to be Jane Austen's love interest. And I don't think his name was, like, there are one or two different names that various Austen family members said was this person's name, this guy's name. It wasn't any of them that I remember. And it just completely implausible, like not even possible. So a story that we have very few facts on, she wasn't even going off of the very few facts that we have. She was completely making it up, but she was using a real person. I thought that was a strange choice on the part of the author, and it made me not interested in reading it anymore. Furthermore, like, I think that this guy, at the time she says he would have met Jane, he would have been married. It didn't make sense. And he didn't, anyway, did not make sense for that choice. Other than that, it enabled her to incorporate the issue of slavery into her storyline. The timing of that aspect works, but this guy in particular, together with Jane, doesn't work at all. Why? It was not a wise choice. And apparently there are other anachronisms in the story, which is interesting because Paula Byrne is widely read as a nonfiction author about Jane Austen, and she's written multiple books about her and other characters in the 19th century and the 18th century, I think, in England, like factual books. So you'd think that she would know this, but apparently she chose to disregard actual history when she wrote this story. So overall, it's a pass for me. I'm not going to read anymore. I did start reading this, Letters to Alice, on first reading Jane Austen, and really enjoying that. I wish it was real. I wish that, like, you know, this really was the letters from an aunt to her adult niece when her niece first started reading Jane Austen. But it's a novel, it's imaginary, but all of the same, really, really enjoying it. I'm not very far, but I'm highlighting so many things. So far, she hasn't even started talking too much about Austen. She's just been talking about literature and the importance of it, and her defense of good literature, and the power of words, the power of story, the power of classic literature. It's just like right up my alley, speaking right to my heart, all of the things that I love. So I am really enjoying this, highlighting a lot of things, really enjoying that. The other thing that I'm reading is still reading The Innocents Abroad, almost halfway through now. I've read up through like chapter 30 or something. I'm just really, really, really enjoying this. Much more even than I thought I would. I'm adding so many things to my list of places that I want to go travel to and visit in Europe. And I'm learning so much. And, you know, I'm reading about things in here, and then I'm looking them up online and seeing pictures of them and verifying the information that Mark Twain is giving about them. And it's just so fun. Really enjoying this. And he was in the chapter that I was just reading, he was talking about how they have these guides in every city that they go to. And so the guide will take them around and show them the sights and explain, you know, give them a tour of the museums and stuff. And so he and his shipmates, who are doing a lot of the touring together, like they're friends now, there's like three or four of them, they are going around to all the different sites together and seeing the different things. And so they've started to prank their guides because they're boys. Honestly, is ultimately the reason why. They're adult men, but they're boys. And so like, because the guide, you know, wants them to be impressed with all this stuff. For example, like when they're in Rome, and so, or I think he was talking about Rome at that time. So if there was, you know, something related to Christopher Columbus, for example, the guide would be like, "Oh, you will love this. You will love this." Like he has a, like, speaking in this accent. "You will love this. This is a letter written by hand. Christopher Colombo. He write by his hand." And so, like, the guide is so excited about it. The gentlemen, they will look at this document and like look at it real close, and then they'll say, "Who wrote this? Christopher Colombo, he wrote by his own hand." And they would be like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "Christopher Colombo, he discovered America." And they're like, "Discovered America? Is he alive?" "No, 300 years ago he died." And they're like, so they're like totally pranking him, because obviously they know who Christopher Columbus is and they know that he's dead, whatever. And so then finally one of the guys said something like, "Well, this handwriting is atrocious. I know many a 14-year-old boy in America who could write with neater handwriting than this. So I don't even know why you're showing us this. Show us something much more interesting. Let's shove off and go find something more interesting." They totally are pranking the tour guides with stuff like that. And so that was cracking me up. And I can totally see a group of single guys traveling through Europe and doing that very same thing to the poor tour guides. So kind of funny. All right, that is my update for now. I don't know what I will pick up next. I did put this in my bag, Pemberly or Pride and Prejudice Continued. I think it'll be a short read. I don't know, maybe for February agency. We'll see. We'll see what I end up picking up. But that's all I got now. So I'll see you next time. It is late Thursday evening, and I don't have too much to say except that my February agency reading is not going well. I finished this, but I really just skimmed it. Pemberly, or Pride and Prejudice, continued by Emma Tennant. One of the first Jane Austen fanfics, if you exclude one that was written like over 100 years ago, which was actually pretty good. Chaotic, incoherent, ridiculous, silly, inconsistent, unrealistic. Shall I go on? Yeah. Don't bother. That's all. Some bum reading this week, for sure, but I've had some very enjoyable reading as well. I continue to read in Georgette Heyer's Regency World on my Kindle. I'm about 5 chapters in. It's a lot longer than I thought that it would be. I mean, I don't know how long I thought it was, but it's longer than I thought. It's going to take me longer than I thought to get through it, especially since I'm not like really reading it every single day. But I am enjoying what I am reading and immersing myself in the Regency culture and learning more about that time and place. I already knew a lot, so there's not like a great deal of new information for me, but I like the way that it's organized, and I like the way that she shares it very factually without a lot of editorializing. And I like that she is giving illustrations from Georgette Heyer's books and giving me, I honestly don't remember some of the names and details that she mentions from books that I have read. And then there are a lot of books by Georgette Heyer that I have not read, and it's making me interested in them and wanting to read them. So I am reading The Innocents Abroad still and really enjoying this. I am more than halfway through now, picking up the pace a little bit and hoping to finish it up this coming week. And I just really am very much enjoying it. Just recently, in what I read in the story, Mark Twain and his fellow travelers were in Italy. He had a lot to say about Italy. He enjoyed the historical aspect of it, but he didn't much love the state of Italy as it was at the time that he was visiting it. It seems like it was probably a time of economic depression. Same with Greece, although I think that's still the situation with Greece. So I don't know if that's been a problem since the 19th century. I don't really know too much about the ins and outs of daily life in these countries for the past 150 years, but it's just very interesting to read his perspective on everything. He does tell the story about how, so there were certain ports that their ship would go into in Europe where they had quarantine protocols. And I don't know if it was like regular quarantine protocols that were just a matter of course if you were coming into that port, or if there were particular illnesses going around like cholera or something he mentioned once or twice that they were trying to forestall. So I'm not really sure what is the situation, but I do remember reading in Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, which I'm assuming was written in a similar time frame. That one starts out, one of the early chapters is about a whole travel group being quarantined in a port of call or whatever on their travels in Europe. So definitely was a thing that happened. Anyway, Mark Twain tells the story about how he and some of his intrepid fellow travelers decided to skirt around the quarantine and go and do their sightseeing in Greece at night. They wanted to see the Acropolis, and so they could see it from their ship, but they wanted to go on land and see it. And if they had waited for the quarantine to end, it would have been like 2 weeks. And so they didn't have time to wait that long. They were just going to move on to the next port. So he and his friends managed to get on shore at night, and they walked a country mile. Well, more than that, they walked quite a ways. They ended up taking a long way, because then they ended up going over the small like hills slash mountains and hiking until they got to where they were able to see the things that they wanted to see. The Parthenon, they saw, I don't remember what all they saw. Anyways, some of his stories, like, I'm not sure how much of it is true, but it's definitely fun listening, reading, and hearing him. I'm not hearing because I'm reading it with my eyes. I'm not listening, but you know, it's like he's sitting there telling you these stories about his travels. I think some of them he's spinning some pretty big yarns, but it's still very humorous and enjoyable. Anyway, his whole escapade of escaping the quarantine and exploring and touring in the middle of the night was humorous. So enjoying that. And then I've read a little bit more in Letters to Alice on first reading Jane Austen. And I find that I definitely do not agree with the author's general worldview on matters philosophical, spiritual, historical, and cultural. But when it comes to literary things, I am really enjoying everything that she has to say and highlighting so much and having quite a conversation with her in the margins of this book with my annotations and highlighting, and really enjoying this. She just has so many insightful things to say about the nature of literature. And in her first chapter, she borrowed an analogy from, I think, a poem or something, about the city of invention and how the literary world, the book world, is a city of invention. And she goes through all of these different neighborhoods in the city, which are types of books, and the buildings that have been built. The buildings represent the books and the authors, some of them who have timeless works of great beauty that everybody wants to go and see. And then others have works, buildings, houses that did not stand the test of time, were shoddily put together and end up falling apart. And then still more are the very popular prefab neighborhoods where all the houses look the same, and boatloads of people come to these neighborhoods and these places and enjoy them. It was just really I was really enjoying that analogy and her exploration of that city of invention in the first chapter. And then in the next chapter, she was talking about what it was like to live as a woman, either the lower class or the upper class, in Jane Austen's time. And I think some of her information was a little bit inaccurate. And also, I think she, again, this is where, you know, some worldview would differ on her perspective on what is better versus worse between then and now. I would disagree with her on a few things, but still it was very interesting to read. And I was enjoying her comparisons and her analysis of what it would have been like, her thoughts on what it would have been like to live in the late 18th century, early 19th century, whether you were in Jane Austen's class or were one of the servants or the working class. So enjoying that. That is as far as I've gotten, but that's about a quarter of the way through the book. So enjoying that and hoping to finish that this week. I think the other one that I want to read that is a late addition to my TBR is The Lady's Mine, because I know that Oshina's book club is reading this month. And I want to join in on the discussion while people are still having the discussion and not be a latecomer to it. So I am going to pick this up probably this weekend and get started on that. I've been wanting to read it for a while. It's been on my TBR for a while. Plus, it will fit for Alma's reading challenge for February, which I have other things I've read that could fit for that, but this also could. This might be what I put in that spot. So that has been my week. Good, bad, downright ugly. It's been a mix. It's been a mix. And I look forward to hearing from you in the comments what you have been reading this week and or doing and enjoying in your life. And hopefully your reading has been altogether better than mine. Although, as I've said, there have been some good moments. So anyway, let's chat in the comments about what we've been reading, and I will see you next time.